The moment Michael saw the woman sitting on the cold concrete outside the wide glass doors of the Riverstone Mall, his breath caught in his chest, like a prayer that had been waiting years to escape. The cardboard sign trembled in her hands as autumn wind rushed through the corridor of stores and passing strangers, and, for a heartbeat, he almost walked past her like everyone else. Then his eyes lifted to her face, thinner now, framed by tangled auburn hair, and the world tilted as recognition struck him with quiet violence. The woman who had once vanished from his life without a word, without a goodbye, without mercy, was sitting right there asking for spare change beneath a flickering sale sign. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the mysterious ways life brings people back together, take a moment right now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in hope, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the soul. Years earlier, Michael's life had been built on ordinary dreams that felt extraordinary because he shared them with Rebecca. They had met in a small Ohio church hall during a winter charity drive. Two volunteers stacking food boxes under yellow lights, laughing over spilled canned goods and tired hands. What grew between them was steady and gentle, the kind of love that made hardship feel lighter and future plans feel unbreakable. They rented a small apartment near the edge of town, painted the walls themselves, burned dinners together, and dreamed of a life stitched with faith, children, and quiet joy. Rebecca had always been the gentler one, her eyes carrying both tenderness and an inward storm Michael never fully learned to read. When she left, it happened in silence. One morning he woke to an empty bed, a closet missing half its clothes, and a folded note on the kitchen table that said only that she was sorry and that he should not look for her. No explanation followed, only the echo of her absence that settled into every corner of his life. The years that followed hollowed Michael in ways he never spoke about. He finished his education, found work in construction management, moved to a different city in Illinois where brick buildings rose like defenses against memory, and learned how to smile without letting the smile touch the grief just beneath it. He dated and even came close to marriage once, but the shadow of abandonment lingered like a quiet fear that anyone could disappear without warning. Sometimes late at night he would still wonder what had broken in Rebecca that morning she walked away, whether it had been his fault or whether there were battles she had been fighting alone. As time passed, anger softened into resignation, and resignation into a brittle peace that told him some questions were never meant to be answered. On the day he saw her again, Michael had only meant to pick up new boots for a job site and hurry home before the cold rain began. The mall was crowded with early holiday shoppers and the noise of fluorescent-lit commerce, and he moved through it like any other man with places to be and no expectation of miracles. It was only after he passed through the sliding doors that he noticed the woman at his feet, seated with a blanket pulled tightly around her shoulders, eyes lowered in quiet exhaustion. The sign asked simply for help. When she lifted her gaze to thank a passerby who offered loose change, Michael saw the same green eyes that once looked at him with trust on Sunday mornings. Time had weathered her face with lines of struggle, and something fragile flickered behind her stare. But there was no mistaking who she was. Rebecca had not vanished from the world as he once imagined. She had fallen into its hardest cracks. Shock held him still as memories and questions surged at once. The life he assumed she had built without him unraveled in seconds. There were bruises of hardship written across her posture, in the tremor of her hands, in the way she tried to disappear into the wall whenever someone approached too closely. Michael did not step forward immediately. The old wound inside him stirred, sharp with betrayal, but it was quickly overtaken by something heavier and more powerful, sorrow. Whatever had happened after she left had not spared her. Something had stripped her down to survival. As he finally moved closer and placed money into her cup, her eyes met his for the first time with full recognition, and the fragile strength in her gaze nearly broke him. Shame, shock, and long-buried emotion rippled across her face, and he saw how deeply life had bent her without finishing the sentence. In the days that followed, through help offered and hesitant contact renewed, Michael learned the truth in fragments that weighed like stones. Rebecca had left because fear had convinced her she would ruin his life. A hidden addiction she had fought in secret had tightened its grip, fed by childhood wounds she had never faced, and a belief that she was beyond saving. When she fled, shame kept her from looking back. What came after was a long descent through unstable shelters, dangerous company, brief recoveries, and devastating relapses that erased years in a blur of loss. Every attempt to rise was followed by another fall, until she became someone she barely recognized. Sitting outside the mall had not been desperation alone, it had been the last thin platform of her will to survive. And now the man she once loved stood at the edge of her ruin, not with accusations, but with quiet steadiness. Change did not crash into their lives like a miracle. It unfolded slowly, painfully, in steps that shook beneath the weight of distrust and self-doubt. Rebecca entered rehabilitation with trembling resolve. Michael helped from a careful distance, offering rides, practical support, and boundaries that honored both compassion and hard-earned wisdom. There were setbacks that reopened fears, days when she disappeared into old patterns and he relived the ache of abandonment, and nights when he questioned whether forgiveness could truly rebuild what had once been broken so completely. Yet there were also mornings where she showed up trying again, eyes clearer, spine straighter, faith stitched carefully back into her speech and movements. Recovery did not make Rebecca who she had been. It shaped her into someone new, raw with honesty and quiet strength. Michael watched not as a rescuer chasing a lost past, but as a witness to the slow resurrection of a human heart. Years passed again, this time differently. Rebecca found work cleaning offices at night, and later trained as a peer counselor for women emerging from addiction and homelessness. Her story became a lantern she lifted for others who believed they had fallen too far to return. Michael continued his career and learned how to love without trying to control outcomes, how to open his hands instead of clenching them around fear. What grew between them was not the simple romance of their youth, but something deeper and harder, one shaped by humility, boundaries, and shared scars. Forgiveness no longer felt like forgetting. It became a daily decision to see one another as people still becoming, still learning how to stand in the light without running from it. Near the end of this journey, long after that first unbearable moment outside the mall had faded into memory, Michael and Rebecca sat together at a small community church in Indiana during a quiet service for those rebuilding their lives. Around them were others who carried sorrows like heavy backpacks and hopes like fragile glass. Their story had become less about loss and more about endurance. If this transformation, this long road from disappearance to redemption, is touching your heart even now, pause to like this video, share it with someone who may be fighting their own unseen battle, and let your engagement be part of the hope that reaches further than this screen. Just before the closing prayer that night, Rebecca bowed her head with tears that no longer felt like shame but like release, while Michael rested beside her with gratitude so deep it hurt. The girl who once left without a goodbye, and the man who once believed silence was the end of the story had been led back together, not by romance alone, but by grace that waited patiently in the ruins. Before this story ends, take a moment and write a comment sharing what this journey made you feel, because your words might reach someone who is still sitting outside their own locked door of hope. In the end, Michael understood that the woman he found begging outside the mall was not the same one who had walked out of their apartment years ago, and neither was he the man she left behind. They were both shaped by loss, faith, and the relentless mercy of time. What once felt like an unforgivable ending had become the beginning of something truer than either of them could have imagined, a reminder that some goodbyes are not the last word, and that even the most broken paths can still lead home.